lovely reference.
We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We welcome you here this evening. And before we get started, we kind of made the decision earlier we're going to keep our masks on tonight, just with the changes throughout the county. So we're going to keep ours on. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Dr. Goller, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Lockhart.
Here.
Ms. Lauer. Present. Dr. Powers.
Present.
Ms. Scott. Here. Mrs. Wise.
Here.
Mr. Burks.
Present.
Mr. Irwin.
Here. Just a few points of clarification before we get started this evening. The first, I believe, Dr. Hayworth, did our original agenda have the tentative agreement with teachers on it?
It did.
Okay, so the teachers haven't had a chance to vote on the tentative agreement yet, so we're going to have to call a special meeting later this week. So if you saw the first draft of the agenda, it had a tentative agreement with teachers on it. We're not quite ready to present that yet. We have to have 2 meetings on that. So that was on the original agenda, but it was removed for this evening. Second point of clarification is our sex education recommendation coming from Dr. Hayworth this evening is an informational presentation. There will be no action taken on that tonight. That will come at a later date. This is just Dr. Hayworth presenting his recommendation. Our vision is working together with our community. We inspire our students to discover their talents and rise to their greatest potential. Our mission is building on the strengths of our diverse community. We create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners. Our values are: we are committed to always asking and answering what is in the best interest of each student. Leading by example, we are committed to personal accountability and work habits, honesty, and respect. We are committed to a safe, secure, and welcoming environment. We are committed to practices of inclusive excellence that value differences. We are committed to respecting the voice of all district stakeholders through collaborative engagement. And we are committed to developing students who improve the quality of life for the Wabash Valley. Now, our next on the agenda, before we have comments, we will have presentations from Bill Payne, and then from Jason Tandle and Todd Samuelson about the Otter Creek Middle School project. So I believe Bill Payne's first, so I'll turn it over to him.
Right, very good. Good evening, President Irwin, members of the board, Dr. Hayworth. As usual, start every Zoom meeting by saying, can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Very good. Well, we'll start this presentation. This is the same presentation, essentially, that we made to staff and community members at Otter Creek in public engagement Zoom meetings on the 21st and 28th of October. We shortened it a bit for the purposes of this evening's meeting, but the basic content is still the same. So this presentation will discuss the needs and then proposed conceptual designs on how to address those needs, those facility needs at Otter Creek Middle School. As we did the presentation, we'll start off with a virtual tour from Principal Sarah Gore to talk about the facility needs at Otter Creek Middle School.
the problems that we're hoping to solve with the building project at Otter Creek Middle School. There are 3 areas our building project will focus on. 1, our cafeteria. 2, our music rooms, and our gymnasium. First, it's important to know a little bit about Otter Creek. Otter Creek Middle School is the 3rd largest school behind North and South High Schools in Vigo County. It absorbed a significant amount of students when Chauncey Rose Middle School closed 8 years ago. This building used to be an elementary school and a junior high school, which is why there's separation between an old side and a new side. One of the things that we're trying to do with this building project is provide more classroom space. We have teachers who do not have their own classrooms, and they're sharing what used to be closets as offices during their planning periods. We simply don't have enough classrooms, and simply imagining of our cafeteria will help us with this. So this is our cafeteria space. We have a small and large cafeteria at this time. This large cafeteria space will be redesigned into classroom space. The small cafeteria will be extended into the courtyard a bit. It will be nice to have one cafeteria space. It will be easier to manage from a supervision standpoint, provide opportunities for flexible student seating, and will allow our cafeteria to become a multi-purpose space where students and staff can meet throughout the day for assemblies and other activities. Classroom space is especially an issue with our music department. We have 3 main music classes: choir, which has its own dedicated room; band, which has a dedicated room that isn't on par with other VCSC band rooms; and orchestra, who uses an old faculty lounge with no acoustic considerations. Because of the lack of appropriate space, we currently store our instruments in our hallway. Vigo County utilizes a smart music program. It's a digital music program that allows individual students to name time as other musicians. There are great practice rooms at other Vigo County middle schools for this program, but at Otter Creek, we don't have practice rooms. We also don't have big enough space for our music performances. I'll talk about the gym in a future video, but we would like to host performances in this space. But the current band room doesn't have the footprint we need. Right now, if the band wants to perform, they set up in our gym. Since Otter Creek is the only school of our size in Vigo County without an auxiliary gym, that displaces our PE classes and athletic teams. For our PE teachers, the gymnasium is their classroom. We're the only Vigo County middle school that has 1 gym instead of 2. This is a big problem for us when we have an assembly or musical performance because it displaces our PE classes. We also have our fitness room taking up gym space over here in the corner. You can see it's under the HVAC system. And when the system gets serviced, we can't use the fitness room. An auxiliary gym, a resource every other school our size in the county has, would allow our PE programs and athletics to continue without interruption when we have other things going on in our main gym. It would also allow us to host more events, even renting this space to community organizations. Our locker rooms are in need of updates and repair, and this project will address those needs. We'll also repurpose the existing locker rooms as the fitness room, allowing for uninterrupted use of that space for PE classes.
Sarah did just a wonderful job in giving us that tour and explaining the needs at Otter Creek Middle School. And we've enjoyed working with her and staff. And then in coming back with conceptual designs, which we'll be showing to you this evening, We've gotten great feedback, which has helped us refine our approach to the designs. Main areas that we'll be looking at this evening are the cafeteria, the music rooms, the gymnasiums, and some alternate bid items should we have favorable competitive bidding. Let's start by getting ourselves oriented to the building. This, of course, is an aerial view. North Lafayette Street is to the left, north is up, and you can see the main building, 49th Avenue, encircles the building around the entire perimeter. View is an overlay of the proposed additions and work to Otter Creek Middle School. So you can see here to the north of the main spectator gymnasium is a proposed new auxiliary gym in a brown color. On the south side is an expansion and renovation of the music suites with the addition shown in red and the existing renovated areas shown in pink. Pardon me. Cafeteria will be expanded into the courtyard, as Sarah had noted, and that's the dark blue area. And then the existing smaller cafeteria will be renovated in the light blue, and the large cafeteria area will be renovated to provide the additional classrooms which are needed. Let's focus in a little bit more on the building plan. And as we move through the presentation, we'll keep focusing in even more closely so that you can have a better understanding of it. And here is the new auxiliary gymnasium, the brown beige color here to the north of the existing spectator gym. The new cafeteria addition in a darker blue, and then the lighter blue are the existing cafeteria areas which will be renovated. On the south side, in the pink area is the music areas that will be renovated, and the red is the expanded additional music space. Again, we'll focus in on each of these, and also in the green and lighter beige areas in just a moment. Let's focus on the cafeteria first. As noted, we'll be expanding out into the existing courtyard with a much larger cafeteria addition. When coupled with the small cafeteria, will provide significant seating to meet the needs of the capacity of the building. We'll also add an additional serving line in this new cafeteria space. Then we'll take over the original large cafeteria and create two more needed classrooms, storage for chairs in the cafeteria, and conference and additional administrative space which is much needed. We show several views to staff and community members as to how the cafeteria, both new and existing, would be laid out. They stated a preference for a combination of brown and rectangular tables, and that's what's shown in this image. These columns represent the existing exterior wall line. The area here, where my mouse cursor is the new expanded large area, the addition that extends into the existing courtyard. We'll make sure to provide plenty of windows so there's lots of natural light and make this a very attractive space which could be serves both for student dining as well as staff meetings, large group instruction, and community meetings after school. Let's take a look at the music rooms then that include choir, band, and orchestra. Here's a floor plan, which I think this is about the way here. I don't know if that shows up on yours as well. So the pink area again is fully renovated existing space. We all know, it was pointed out by Sarah, there is not enough overall music space to support all of your programming. So in fact, music is another, currently choir is in another classroom to the north of here. By totally gutting and renovating the existing space, we're able to right-size orchestra and band rooms to provide both instrument storage rooms within the space and practice rooms, but also accommodate the amount of floor space that's desired for all of the activities. The new addition will include a right-sized choir room. This will make sense because it will be combined as a music compartment now for the first time. And of course, we'll be extending the corridor to provide access into the choir room as well. From the exterior, looking towards the building, this shows the existing music rooms here just to the south of the main spectator gym. This next image shows the additional new choir room, which follows in the same character and architectural aesthetic of the existing building. I'm more interested though, as we go to the inside, this will be a very attractive space with lots of natural light, adequate floor space for lots of flexibility for both choir setup as well as other activities in this space, and appropriate acoustical treatments as well. Move to the gymnasium then. Here. So, as I mentioned, the new auxiliary gym is proposed immediately to the north of the existing spectator gym. North is up in this image. In this floor plan, where my mouse cursor is along the bottom, this is the existing canopy breezeway on the north side of the spectator gym, east outdoor activity areas. It will be enclosed and become a corridor which can be closed and secured to provide after-school access to the new auxiliary gym below, or for activities during weekends as well. Immediately north of the corridor are two new locker rooms for boys and girls, with access both from that corridor as well as directly into the auxiliary gymnasium. A new main entrance extends from that corridor into the gymnasium, both for students as well as for spectators for athletic activities. We have two offices indicated, satisfying both boys and girls coaching and PE instructors, a storage space, boys and girls, public restrooms, and a concession space. So again, this new auxiliary gym feature can really stand alone as its own entity for after school and weekend activities. The gym addition accommodates a full-size basketball court, north and south, and as well as two east-west cross courts. Bleachers are provided on the east side and are telescoping so they can be retracted for full use in cross courts. This is a quick view from the exterior looking back towards the building if you were north and hovering above Otter Creek Middle School. This spectator gym here, the existing cafeteria, and that courtyard that we discussed. This next view shows the proposed addition. This is very schematic at this point. We've not finalized colors for the auxiliary gymnasium exterior. We'll work carefully to blend that in with the existing building aesthetic. In a distance then, you can actually see the addition to the dining area that extends out into the courtyard and the windows looking northerly from that space. Inside the gymnasium then, you can see this will be a wood floor. You can see the full gymnasium court. What's not illustrated here, but there will be striping for the two cross courts, and of course basketball goals for the main court as well as the two cross courts. Telescoping bleachers will be on the right side, to your right, or on the east wall. You can also see that we'll be introducing much natural light into the gymnasium. Again, we discussed this with staff and community members, and it was preferred that a translucent type of material be provided so that there was natural light that minimized any glare. So we're in interesting times in terms of construction pricing. Fortunately, with the COVID crisis, we have seen, on the other hand, more prices being driven down from a construction standpoint. So we want to make sure that we respect your budget, but at the same time, make as much use and get as much value as possible. For that reason, we're studying several alternate bid options that we're hopeful can be afforded in a very competitive bidding environment in 2021. Those include teacher support spaces, an art room renovation, and locker room renovation. Let's touch on each one of those briefly then. So again, we're coming back to an overall view, floor plan of the building. And as you can see here, in the blue is the cafeteria area, and over to the west is the main entrance. And at that main entry, we will be introducing a secured entry much like you have in your other buildings, which is not present currently. These light green areas to the west show some improved teacher areas, and to the west then, locker room renovations and art room renovation. We have some plans to focus in a little bit more on each one of those areas. I'll go to those now. Again, at the main entrance, there's currently sort of a miniature outdoor courtyard. We'll be enclosing that and creating a new secure vestibule for visitor entrance without gaining access directly into the building. Teacher workroom and lounge can be improved, and those are light green areas that we showed to be remodeled. If we here just to the south then are proposed locations for 2 additional staff restrooms. This building is really short in terms of its number of staff restroom access points, and so these would be certainly those that would be welcome. Over to the west side of the building then, what's currently being used as the choir room will be remodeled, accommodate an art classroom. It's both generous in size and will have windows from the north, great filler natural light. The beige area is currently a locker room. This is actually part of the base bid. We didn't see that in the previous version where we saw the upgrade gym. We'll be remodeling this. You recall that Sarah pointed out the current fitness room is a fenced-off area within the main gymnasium. So this will be much more appropriate for the functional aspects of the fitness room being located in its own room now. Just to the south of that fitness room are existing locker rooms. And again, if we can afford these in a competitive bidding environment, these will be remodeled to look much more attractive and more functional. In closing, our proposed schedule for this project would be to consider issuing bid documents in March of 2021. That's a great time as contractors are looking to fill up their schedule for 2. We would receive bids in April, consider contract awards in June, and then we are projecting the possibility of an early completion and occupancy for January of 2023. Of course, we live in the Midwest in Indiana, and weather can always complicate things during the winter, so we'll have to see. Again, we might experience an early completion in January, but anticipate all spaces being completed by March of 2023. That completes my presentation. And President Irwin, Dr. Hayworth, I don't know if there are any questions before I turn the floor over to Jason Tansel and Todd Samuelson.
I have none. I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. Well, hearing none, thank you very much, and I will now turn the screen over to Jason Todd.
Good evening, members of the board, President Irwin, Dr. Hayworth. Thank you for having myself and Todd Samuelson. We are with Baker Tilly, and we serve as the school board
Everyone else has left the call.
advisor. I just got a notification that everyone left the call, so I want to make sure. Can you all hear me? Are you all still there?
Yes.
Okay, great. I was really worried there for a minute that I did something catastrophic. So thank you for still being with us. But again, Jason Tansel, Todd Samuelson with Baker Tilly, and we serve as the school corporation's municipal advisor. So obviously, as Bill has gone through the project at Otter Creek Middle School, it's our responsibility here as your municipal advisor to review the financial characteristics of the proposed project and how Vigo County School Corporation could pay for this project with a $10 million first mortgage bond to be issued in 2021. Some of the characteristics that I will review in my PowerPoint that I'll pull up here in a second are maximum repayment term, maximum borrowing amount, maximum annual payments, estimated debt service tax rate, impact. And our role here is to, at this project hearing, is to establish these maximums that we cannot exceed, but we can come down from. So with that, I will share my screen and review the information. Okay, get this out of the way here. So as I mentioned, the financing being discussed here tonight is for $10 million. And we would estimate that of that $10 million, $9,750,000 would be available for the project. Right now, we have an estimated repayment term of 10 years, 9 months, but we also want to provide flexibility to the school corporation. So we have a range of an estimated repayment term between 3 years and 12 years. Right now, our estimate is 10, but we want to provide as much flexibility to the school corporation as possible. With that 10-year repayment term, we have an estimated interest expense of $2,019,336, and that is based upon current market indicators plus 1%. The maximum annual lease rental payment that would be within any resolutions, should the board decide to move forward, would be $3,764,000. And that is based upon a 3-year repayment term where, again, just trying to provide as much flexibility to this corporation as possible. The tax rate associated with that payment is 8.48 cents. However, due to the school corporation's already existing debt service payments, we would project no debt service tax rate increase with this $10 million financing. And I'll explain why in the next few slides. This is currently a picture in a graph form of the 6 bonds that are outstanding of the school corporation. You can see at the bottom each individual bond that is represented by a color, and you can see there the school corporation has 5 general obligation bonds outstanding, and also a first mortgage refunding and improvement bonds from 2017. But as you can see in 2020, the total annual debt service payments of the school corporation is just under $10 million. And that drops in 2021 with further drops in 2022, and all debt being repaid by 2026. This graph does take into account the general obligation bonds the school corporation issued this summer. Those are in the light blue bars, so those are also taken into consideration here. But the lower annual debt service payments are what provide the school corporation with capacity to bring on a potential new project. Typically, as annual payments rise and fall, so too would the debt service tax rate. And so you can see here that with payments falling in 2022, 2023, and again, all debt being repaid by 2026, the school corporation really has put itself in a position to be able to tackle this $10 million financing while also preserving its flexibility moving forward should it pursue any other capital projects. So also want to make mention here that with the debt being repaid by 2026, that's what Standard & Poor's would deem as rapid amortization. So the school corporation has done a great job is putting itself in this position to be able to tackle these financing needs should they arise. My final slide here on slide 4 is another visual that represents our estimated payment plan for the school corporation for the $10 million financing for Otter Creek. But we've also included what would a potential general obligation might look like in 2021 as well, and the school corporation keeping its general obligation program going. You can see here that even bringing on the $10 million financing in 2021, we were able to still maintain those steadily falling debt service payments in 2023, 2024, and again, all debt being repaid still within 10 years, really preserving the flexibility for the school corporation moving forward should it tackle any other capital projects. But again, my main takeaway here is we would not be projecting a debt service tax rate increase. We would be maintaining the tax rate at 2020, 2021 levels. So again, the school corporation would be able to take on this additional $10 million of debt while keeping its debt service tax rate at current levels. With that, that concludes my presentation, and I will turn it back over to President Irwin, Dr. Hayworth.
Jason, just a clarifying question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
We set that borrowing limit at $10 million in 2020 for a school district our size. Could we have extended it larger than that without seeking a referendum?
That is correct. The school corporation, due to its assessed value, the maximum amount, the project threshold for a referendum project, where it would legally be required, is over $16 million. And so the $10 million number being discussed here tonight is well below the $16 million. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for them from the board? Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your presentation. And this was the first of 2 meetings. We will have another one at our next regular scheduled board meeting.
1 second. First, Donna, should the public have an opportunity to speak to the project at this time?
So right now, we'll take comment on this project while the gentlemen are still on the line, and then we'll move on with the rest of our agenda. Seeing none, I think you gentlemen are done now. We thank you for your time, and we appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes that portion, the hearing portion of our meeting. So we'll move on to our regularly scheduled board meeting. So that brings us to our first call for citizen comments. And this can be on agenda items only. Please state your name and which agenda item you'll be speaking on, and the 5-minute time limit applies. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Oh.
Good evening. I'm Ruth Fairbanks. One time, I read to you the entire material dealing with HIV in the 8th grade CPR curriculum. I'm talking about sex ed. Remember that? HIV causes a rash on the arms and body. Do you remember that? The entire 8th grade curriculum. In the high school curriculum for CPR, there's even less. The instructor manual mentions HIV 4 times. All 4 are in passing in the context of other STIs. This same unit spends an entire page and a half on pubic lice. This balance is wrong, and you know it, and you know if qualified people drew up this curriculum, they wouldn't spend that much more time on pubic lice than on HIV. You should have all seen by now the external review of the curriculum. It's a long list of gross errors that show what we already knew and have been saying for over a year. Medical accuracy and inclusion were never a priority of this curriculum. The authors of the CPR curriculum, who were fine with all of those errors just a month ago, are not qualified to fix them. And even if they do, they've shown themselves incapable of making medically accurate updates. Just last week, Viv Healthcare, a pharmaceutical company, released interim data on their HIV prevention drug, cabotegravir. This is an every other month injection, which seems on track to becoming an important tool in preventing HIV. If the CPR curriculum authors couldn't include PEP and PrEP, which have been the standard of care for those at higher risk of HIV exposure for years, or the HPV vaccine, which has been recommended for girls since 2009 and all adolescents for quite some time now, then they will not be able to add information on other new life-saving treatments and preventatives like cabotegravir when they become available. This is a field where being up to date and being conversant in the relevant literature matters as a matter of life and death. CPR is even less likely to fix their problems with inclusivity. You've been in meetings where supporters of the curriculum repeatedly claimed that since they were talking about relationships, any student could just imagine themselves in those stories and apply what they learned to whatever relationship they were in. This has been their position all along. LGBTQ students should just extrapolate. But inclusivity doesn't depend on the imagination of those who are marginalized. It means active representation, and it means addressing for all our students topics that are of particular concern to LGBTQ students. CPR will not produce a curriculum inclusive to LGBTQ youth because they don't want to. What do you want? You want inclusivity? And no one even seems able to acknowledge our insistence that a sexual and reproductive health curriculum pay attention to students with disabilities. We should include consideration of disabilities in the curriculum provided to all of our students, any of whom might someday become disabled or fall in love with someone who is. At these school board meetings for the past 15 months and at the listening session in July, you heard from many current and former students who were pained by the shaming in the CPR curriculum. As recently as the last school board meeting, the director of CPC claimed that their program did not operate on the basis of shame and, quote, to imply that CPR does would be inappropriate, end quote. Well, every one of you here at these tables in front of me was present at a school board meeting in March where a former CPR instructor said he thought it was a good thing to draw a parallel between stealing and premarital sex. And if one was shameful, well then so was the other. Do you remember that? If the CPC and CPR instructors do not see their program as driven by shame and stigma, how do you expect them to be able to remove that message? CPR is not acceptable curriculum in our public schools, not at all. The external reviews the corporation sought have shown that this curriculum is fatally flawed. CPR should be off the table. You're going to hear a recommendation from the superintendent. I can't ask him or you a question right now, but you can. If it's not clear in his remarks, ask Dr. Hayworth if he or any other school corporation staff have looked at other curriculum. Ask them if they know what's available in the school. Ask what else was looked at when drawing up these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Just 1 second. I think Mr. Cox is going to wipe it down.
I'm not real fast today.
My name is Beth Decosta, resident here in Vigo County. There seems to be a small contingent to move sex education in Vigo County schools away from defined boundaries. A large and strong majority, which includes parents, grandparents, students, and all teachers, have expressed their approval and appreciation for the continued use of the Creating Positive Relationships program. This pressing effort to change makes me ask a question. Is there more of an agenda push here? Why would the board want to add sex education material to minor children that they represent that leaves basic biology education regarding sex? The majority of parents want you to stay within your elected boundaries. The Indiana law is specific to educators and teaching abstinence only. The Creating Positive Relationships program stays within the law and parental respect in teaching pregnancy prevention. Why would you want to diverge from the law? Support expressed from the majority of the parental community states they do not want change, and they want the CPR program to be continued to be taught. I wish the CPR program was around when I was in middle school and high school. The helpful support would have helped me manage peer pressure much better, and tell me the sexual relationship is very important and valuable, and given help in seeing why postponing sex fully protects you from life-changing consequences. CPR teaches all the accurate facts a young person needs. I charge the board to respect your boundaries. Don't bring a compromise to our vulnerable youth. Thanks.
Thank you. Are you guys together or?
Hi, my name is Nathan Hawkins. I'm a sophomore at Terre Haute South High School, and I'm holding a phone for Ruth Bro, who cannot attend but would like to speak. Ruth, we're ready. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, yes.
Okay, great. Yes, I'm Ruth Bro. I'm an attorney, and I have two children in Vigo County High School. I'd like to make a few points. Number one, abstinence-only education is not acceptable. Some minor edits in the current curriculum or even major overhauling won't fix the curriculum. Now, we know that abstinence is 100% effective in preventing pregnancy and STIs, but we also know that we never had 100% abstinence. Far from it. One need only look at statistics for Vigo County. CPR's own coordinator said that abstinence has a high failure rate. Nearly 40% of 9th to 12th graders have had sex, and nearly 30% are currently sexually active in the last 3 months. This is despite the curriculum being in our schools for 24 years. That presents a lot of risk, pregnancy, STDs, etc. Indiana law does not prevent sex education courses to talk about other things to decrease risk, contrary to what the speaker before me just said. And as a matter of public health, it makes sense. Research has repeatedly demonstrated that programs promoting abstinence only until heterosexual marriage occurs are ineffective. On the other hand, those who adopt more medically based education programs were effective in encouraging adolescents to wait longer before having sex, and that when they did, they used protective behaviors such as condoms to reduce risk. The leading medical and educational authorities oppose abstinence-only education, the kind that CPR has been imposing on our kids for over 20 years. These leading medical and educational authorities that do not favor this kind of program are the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the Society for Adolescent Health and Medicine, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the American Public Health Association, National Education Association, and National School Boards Association. They all oppose abstinence-only education, and they endorse a more comprehensive education that includes both abstinence promotion and accurate information about contraception, human sexuality, and STIs. Thus, if you really want our kids to delay sexual activity, need a program that is not abstinence-only in its teaching. Second, law and policy indicate that the school corporation can and should do better. Indiana law does not require an abstinence-only curriculum. The law is a floor, saying that you should be saying that abstinence is the best way, but that it doesn't say that that's the only thing that you can teach. And second, the current curriculum ignores the law of land. 5 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court declared a fundamental right for same-sex couples to marry. The Constitution guarantees that right. And the curriculum has not been revised to reflect that recognition of that basic human right. And so, and then also we had other Supreme Court decisions
30
Bias
seconds
and
remaining.
curriculum can continue to exist with the bias presenters will perpetuate bias and discrimination, not only in our schools, but as our kids eventually become adults and go into the world. They will carry with them these biases. So you can't just have people opt out if they don't want to hear it. Others are hearing it and incorporating these biases. We have to embrace diversity and reduce bullying, and require us to meaningfully address the issues of sexuality, gender identity, disability, and
That's
abuse
time.
for
Thank you very much.
and others who have disabilities who have survived abuse. We have to be fully inclusive in our curriculum. So any
That's
review of
time.
the
Thank you.
curriculum has got to incorporate inclusivity. And a minor update is not in this pandemic review.
I'm Lola Porter. I'm a senior at Terre Haute North Vigo High School. When it comes to the abstinence-based sex education we have in Vigo County, I just feel like it doesn't make much sense, especially I'm a senior in high school. We only take 1 year, one try of sex ed, and we take it our freshman year. And when the CPC people come in for that week, no one really is like paying attention to it, mostly because they know it's abstinence-based and they know that's not what they're planning on practicing. Not all of the students, but I would say the majority. And I do think it's important that students have boundaries, but I don't think it's the school board's responsibility to teach them that. But it's their responsibility to educate them so the students can set their own healthy boundaries and are not scared or taught things to scare them. Education is important when it comes to, especially when it comes to things like sex. And even though it's uncomfortable to talk about, it's important that people know them so they can be safe and they can have good boundaries. That's all.
Thank you. Any others this evening? We got one coming up and you can be next. No, sorry. You keep going. Somebody raised their hand, I apologize.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, school board. My name is Claire Craigmile. Just want to say, the CPC has no business being in our school system if their information isn't accurate and if it actively excludes certain students. Why has inclusion, this is a hypothetical question because I know you can't answer questions right now, why has inclusion of LGBTQ+ students and students with disabilities still not been properly addressed? Is this sex education curriculum compliant with school policy on non-discrimination? If it excludes groups of people, it's not. I find the number of medical inaccuracies found in the review very concerning. One of the reviews said the medical information, particularly regarding STIs and condoms, is frequently inaccurate, distorted, and out of date. How are we protecting and informing our students with a curriculum such as this? That they have been allowed to misinform our students for so long is egregious. They have had plenty of opportunities to fix it. They can say they are not shame-based, but intent and impact are not the same thing. Impact matters more than your intent. And the impact that we've seen, and that my peers have felt, is that there was shame. And people who responded to the survey, they felt shame too. The majority of the comments said it was shame-based, that it was damaging, that it was ineffective. Across the years, former and current students agreed that this program is ineffective, inadequate, and harmful. Please do not allow this to continue. And I also just want to acknowledge the idea that there's some kind of hidden agenda to us even bringing this to the forefront. Like, no, absolutely not. My only motive is that I went through this myself and my peers did, and after processing the impact it had on us, just realizing that something needs to change. That we can't keep going on the same way we always have just because we always have. That there needs to be a better system in place, and that the school board needs to own up to that. Thank you.
Thank you. After you get it cleaned up, then you can go, sir.
My name is Dominique Decosta. I've been a resident of Vigo County for over 26 years. I'm a retired engineer, manufacturing aerospace engineer. And I've read the curriculums, both the one that they would like to impose upon the school board and the children of our community. And I've also participated and read the CPR and CPC one. And I find most of the stuff that's been discussed, previous meetings, also the one that the attorney discussed, is just full of false information. Basically, it's just proposals and futuristic looks, like she stated, you know, what if someone falls in love with somebody in the future? Look, people drive cars. There's a lot of death in driving of cars, but we don't keep people from taking driver's ed. And there's a lot of changes in the technology of driver's ed, yet people still die with all the technologies that's put in. We can't, in any kind of curriculum, prevent other people interpreting the information improperly or digesting it differently than the norm. We can only go to the average. You being a mathematician would know that. We go statistically to the mid, to the average. If they want to do something outside that average, then by all means, the school corporation with their own funds can create some other curriculum for the handicapped or the LGBTQ XYZs and have that with themselves. We shouldn't mix those two curriculums. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cheryl Huey. I get really nervous up here with everyone staring at me, so I don't have anything like prepared. I have been coming to these meetings to advocate for a change in the sex ed policy. First, I want to say LGBTQ XYZ is highly offensive because my daughter is gay. Oh, okay. Okay.
Hey, if
You're
you
not
direct your
wasting
question
my
to me,
time.
I'm going to
And
answer
let's
you.
keep to the point here.
Anyway.
Please address us, thank you.
I don't think another thing in response to what he said, I don't think a new program has been decided on, if we even go with a new program. So you can't really base a decision on an unknown. In response to, who was this lady here? She said about why would we want to change this program? We want to change the program because it does not include all students. I've glanced over this. I still don't see anything that's inclusive. I don't want the CPC coming in and teaching my son, who's now in 6th grade, about sex education. Yes, it is the parent's job, but not all children have a parent or a trusted adult who will speak to them openly and honestly and at a level to where they will understand what's being said to them. Kids get on the internet and there's so much misinformation out there. They need someone to tell them the truth. And if it's the school system that does it, so be it. That's what you need. Starting where the student is at, that means you have to have a curriculum that includes and is reflective of what our kids are facing, not what us parents face. And I know you can't answer questions, but I do have 3. I sent you an email a few months back that had links to like the Trevor Project and Human Rights Commission and stuff like that as to why LGBTQ sex ed being included is needed, for lack of a better word. So I do have a question. Why does it feel like the CPC is still teaching this? I had already said, why does it not feel inclusive? And why can't the teachers be the ones who teach us rather than some random community members coming in and teaching these kids about sex? They don't need to come in and teach my kid about sex. Teachers need to teach my kids about sex. I need to teach my kids about sex, which I do. But I'm saying, teachers need to do it, not a random community member. In closing, my daughter gave me 2 comments, my eldest. She said that when she went through the program, they made it seem like STDs go away with marriage. Yes, I will agree. Abstinence is the only way to prevent diseases and pregnancy, I agree. But that's not the world we live in. That's not reality. So we need to change with the times. And she also informed me that because of the CPC program, this CPR program, a lot of girls have, I'm going to get graphic, I don't know if you know, did you know that a lot of girls have anal sex because you can't get pregnant that way? Just food to, think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got somebody that stood up, and then you can have your turn. Sorry, no, keep going. You're good. Sorry, it's hard to make eye contact and facial expressions right now.
I'm holding a phone for Christie Myers, who'd like to make some remarks. Okay, Christie?
Yes.
Okay,
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. First, I want to thank the board for the opportunity to speak. In fact, I want to talk about opportunities. Real Center of Vigo County has had the opportunity to bring this topic to the board, question the current curriculum, and have an external review of the curriculum as requested. All this has been done in the last 15 months. We have taken this opportunity to grow as a group, research, and network with like-minded people in the community to achieve our goal of bringing medically accurate, science-based, and inclusive health and sex education to the students of Vigo County. This is in order to give them the tools and info needed to navigate interpersonal and sexual relationships as they enter adulthood. CPC has had opportunities as well. They've had 20 years of opportunities to fully update their curriculum, not just remove certain demonstrations after several years of student and parent complaints. CPC has had almost 3 decades of opportunities to conduct an independent review of their curriculum to target any issues with the intention of improving CPR. Instead, the external review requested by Real Sex Ed of Vigo County noted many examples of inaccurate info, such as missing facts, ineffective education techniques, and implicit bias. This was an opportunity to hire or consult an educational professional on how to provide inclusion for both LGBTQ people and people with disabilities. A chance to hire someone to adapt instruction so it's accessible to people with disabilities. CPC has shown neither the inclination nor the ability to change the curriculum to be accessible to all. In the past 16 months, CPC has had many opportunities to fix the curriculum and or present an action plan to address all these concerns with intent rather than curriculum for students. Instead, they've thrown scraps of ideas at our group. They've led misinformation campaign and turned this issue into an us versus them. Now, this is an opportunity for the school board. This is an opportunity to choose a curriculum that serves all populations of students, regardless of religious affiliation, sexual orientation, or ability. This is the opportunity to get rid of a curriculum that discriminates and harms our students. Students with disabilities are almost a fifth of all students in Vigo County schools. Excluding them through this curriculum is not only a disservice to them, but to all students. This is the school board's chance to fix this egregious oversight. A new, leveled, adaptable, medically accurate, inclusive curriculum can only be a positive opportunity for Vigo County students and their futures. Thank you.
Thank you.
LOC, the CPR and EPT coordinator for the CPC. I just wanted to touch on a few things that have been covered this evening. For those who haven't had a chance yet to read the reviews, I just wanted to give you some insight into them since I know the CPR curricula and can correlate their findings to actual CPR material and quotes. I don't have time to go line by line, of course, but I just wanted you to understand that the second review isn't quite what it seems to be, at least on the surface, and once we start to digest it a little bit. Karen Mitchell is the writer of the curriculum, and this has been forwarded on to her, and she's going line by line. Because we at the CPR program, we welcome feedback from a variety of sources about our program. We don't want to implement something that's not successful at its objectives and that's not medically accurate. Karen Mitchell takes these claims also very seriously. Since we do not know the exact credentials of the person who reviewed this curriculum, we have to verify all claims with our own experts in the field. So Karen Mitchell has contacted her infectious disease professionals, who are understandably a little busy at the moment, to read these reviews, as well as a practitioner in the field of obstetrics and gynecology in order to verify and advise us on these. And I wanted the board to know that we are taking them very seriously and that we are finding our own experts in the field to advise us on this. I want to reiterate to you what the CDC says about evaluations of public health programs. Evaluations should be practical and feasible, conducted within the confines of resources, time, political context. Moreover, it should serve a useful purpose, be conducted in an ethical manner, and produce accurate findings. I'm bringing this up because there have been many instances this evening where you've heard that there were gross medical inaccuracies. There was wonderful feedback, but I will tell you, in going line by line, some of the things that are in the second review are things like needing an updated source, or things that don't quite jive with what the CDC is saying. So therefore, we do need our own experts to weigh in on where that discrepancy is happening. In one of the instances, it claims that we say condoms are one of the least effective. This is from the CDC's own statements. This isn't from the CPC's, from the CPR curriculum. I also wanted to give another example, one labeled medical inaccuracy. It's on our syphilis presentation. It was certainly helpful to be able to change the word borough, but it goes on to say something like this: syphilis is not a virus. That implies that our curriculum states this, and I looked through it to make sure it does not state this anywhere. In fact, on page 34 it says, because syphilis is a bacterial infection, it is curable in the early stages. Not once do we label it a virus. So it's things like that that we have to go through and just make sure that we are doing our due diligence in our curriculum. I also wanted to note about inclusivity. We do talk to all of our students on day one and tell them that our lessons are for all orientations. Our program is not, I will repeat, is not exclusive to anyone. Also, evaluation findings, according to the CDC, should be used to make decisions about program implementation and to improve program effectiveness. That's exactly what we want to do. Increase program effectiveness. Every good program is good because of the variety of feedback it receives. You have to remember, we just received these outside reviews. We receive surveillance feedback from teachers as to the performance and implementation of the program by the instructors. We get program content feedback by teachers, instructors, and students. And we need all of that to make a valuable program, and that's what we want to continue doing. We want to make sure that the administration has the utmost confidence in the instructors, in the implementation, and in this program. We also keep with state educational guidelines regarding abstinence as the expected standard
30 seconds.
and as a solid risk avoidance approach. And we're grateful to have this option for the students and parents that want this program for their students. And we look forward to exceeding your expectations in implementing a positive and impactful program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, thank you.
My name is Robin Janik. I am a senior lecturer at Indiana University School of Medicine, Terre Haute, and I, like a lot of people here, am here to talk to you today about the CPR curriculum. I have a background in sex education. As a master's student, my thesis and practicum focused on sex education. As a student, I created a short 3-module curriculum on sexual health for teens. In the course of developing that curriculum, I reviewed CDC guidelines and best practices for sex education. I also studied evaluations on different types of sex education curricula, including abstinence only, abstinence plus, and comprehensive sex education. One of the most important components of any curriculum, whether it be a sex education curriculum or a math curriculum or a reading curriculum, is having a pedagogical framework to use in constructing individual lessons. For sex ed curriculum, we use frameworks based on behavioral theories that have been developed and tested to change behavior or guide behavior that leads to better decision-making regarding sex. This includes helping kids make decisions about remaining abstinent, as well as practicing safer sex. As the evaluators of the sex ed curriculum have said, the CPR curriculum has no health framework. This is important because that means that lessons taught are basically a hodgepodge of different ideas that aren't evidence-based. In other words, this curriculum won't result in any desired health change, let alone actually educate kids about sex and how to delay sexual initiation. We've already heard comments today about what this is leading to. If we don't employ these best practices or having required components that are shown to work, we don't have an effective curriculum. I've looked at other curriculum and all of them have a health framework. All of the ones that are evidence-based on the CDC website have a health curriculum, have a health framework. They're based on behavioral theory. In fact, all the ones I've looked at clearly state what that behavioral theory is in the first few pages of the trainer guide. This is not true with the CPR curriculum. And this was stated again in the evaluation of that curriculum. That was one of the criticisms of the CPR curriculum. There was no health framework. It's not guided by any sort of pedagogical theory or framework at all. Likewise, all these curricula have been evaluated and tested. The CPR curriculum until now hasn't. And as we've read, it fell far short of meeting any sort of guidelines for what is usable curriculum, let alone a good one. One of the curricula I've looked at is called Making a Difference. I have a copy here, and I would, if I can pass it to Mr. Irwin.
We don't pass materials right now.
Okay. Well, I have it, and I'd be happy to give it to you. The curriculum uses 3 different behavioral theories. One of them is called social cognitive theory, and I know that, and it's near and dear to my heart because that's what I used for mine. As a student, I knew better. I would advise all of you to look at the curriculum. It's an abstinence-based curriculum. It says right here on the cover, an evidence-based, abstinence-based approach to teen pregnancy and HIV/STD prevention. It's not only does it stress abstinence as the guiding principle and fits Indiana law, it also stresses communication skills and developing positive relationships, just as the CPR curriculum does. In fact, this curriculum does everything the CPR curriculum should do, and it does it within the health frameworks that have been tested repeatedly. Regardless of what curriculum you do decide to use, and I hope that we look at other ones, because there's no reason why we should be tied to this one just because it's what we've been using forever. We need to apply the same standards to the sex ed curriculum that we would to a math curriculum or a reading curriculum. We owe our kids at least that much.
30 seconds.
That is all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hello.
Dr. Irwin,
Dr. Hayworth and the board. My name's Eileen Downey, and I've spoke to you before, and I just wanted to say a few words. I've not prepared anything ahead of time, but I did just get this from Dr. Hayworth, and I was looking it over, and I want to let the board and everyone else and Dr. Hayworth know that I appreciate all the work that you've put into this, and I think that this is a really good document that you've put together for the recommendation for that. And I just wanted to read here just a little part here. It says, well, first off, okay, I did have two thoughts before I came up here. I wanted to remind everybody here that the current sex ed program that we have is really just a little piece of what the health teachers teach. And I don't know, from the sound of it, I don't know that everybody in the room is aware of that the health teachers actually teach sex education, in that they invite as a guest speaker the CPR program into the classroom. The CPR program is funded by contributions from people like me, that the community actually pays for all of the books and everything for the CPR program. So that is something else to consider for all the people in this room, that how would they get the, the different curriculum, who is going to pay for that? Certainly, I wouldn't hope that parents and parents would have to do that. But anyway, I've seen the Making a Difference, some of that as well. We actually purchased a copy. It was $250, I think, and it's basically something I could not hardly read through. It's very disturbing that would be taught in a school setting. But anyway, in here, I think it's great. It says, as our sex education curriculum focuses on delivering Indiana state standards, which it does, the current one, our efforts in diversity, inclusion, and civility will investigate ways that all families and students can find themselves within those standards and help teachers recognize how to meet students where they are. Through the creation of a district-wide strategic plan for diversity, inclusion, and civility, we look forward to bias training and other staff professional development that can influence our school environment. We can and will strive to be a more welcoming place for all students. Part of creating a climate of diversity, inclusion, and civility is representation. Through hiring practices and the inclusion of diverse people on curriculum committees in all content areas, we hope that all students and families will see themselves reflected in our workforce and educational materials. There's so much more. I just didn't know if everybody had had a chance to read this from some of the comments. But I think that's where we need to focus, is changing, leave the sex ed program that's working, the CPR program that almost all Vigo County, except for almost all parents, can live with. If they want to teach something separate later on, they can do that. But this is just the facts, just the medically accurate part of the optimum health model. Teach that, and then if folks want to teach something extra, they can. But then also, through all of the other teacher training, you can assist with the inclusivity, if there's bullying issues, things like that. I think that's great. So I just want to again thank you all for listening to all of the complaints, etc. But I want to just thank you also. I think you're doing a great job. Hello, my name is Margaret Herdlick, and tonight I would like to focus my remarks on evidence versus misinformation and facts versus hysteria. For more than a year, overwhelming evidence has been presented to this school board in support of removing the sex ed curriculum that is failing our children. As the previous speaker said, it may be a tiny piece. It's a tiny piece that needs to be removed and replaced with something far, far better. We presented you with sample chapters. You've heard many, many speakers over the past year, a wide range of voices from the LGBTQ community, for example.
We presented statistics on Vigo County's appalling rates of teen pregnancy and STIs. But I also want to remind you that we have consistently and factually rebutted the arguments presented by supporters of the CPR program. And let's be very clear, there have been so many falsehoods and misrepresentations in this past year. When they first argued that schools can only present abstinence in Indiana, a lawyer came, she spoke tonight, who explained so clearly that abstinence is the floor, not the ceiling. When they talked about how the teen pregnancy rate has gone down in Vigo County, and they tried to take credit for it, we presented you with statistics showing you that for 20 years nationally, these have gone down. But in fact, in Vigo County, we are worse than Indiana's average and worse than adjacent counties. So this is nothing to be proud of. They have insisted that their curriculum is science-based and free from religion, and yet the external reviews did find numerous gross medical inaccuracies and omissions, and a very quick online search regarding the religious aspect of it brings up all sorts of examples. Creating positive relationships. This program teaches the gospel and the value of sexual abstinence to thousands of teens in the Nicaragua public school system. So there is something called separation of church and state. Many of us believe very strongly in it. They have used, the other speakers for CPR have used consistently biased and non-credible sources to make all sorts of claims. One example would be something that the previous speaker has repeatedly brought up, the American College of Pediatricians, which, according to this article, which was written by a doctor at the Harvard Medical School and which was verified by Psychology Today, is an anti-LGBT group, just for the record. CPR supporters have tried to create a sense of shock and outrage by using language like pedophilia, pornography, sex toys, incest. Look at that making a difference curriculum. There is nothing shocking about it. We've heard that we're bringing the devil into the schools. School board members have received hateful emails and phone calls and have been told they're going to be voted out over this issue. My point is this. These kinds of ugly and misleading tactics are not used by people of good faith. They are being employed by an organization and its supporters desperate to maintain their privileged status in our school corporation. What on earth has this program done to deserve this favored status? We should be looking at alternative programs. We continue to hear vague comments from the board about the importance of parent choice and compromise. So after a year, I have to ask you, how much evidence do 7 well-educated people need to see that removing this sex ed curriculum is the best choice for our children? Why did you run for school board? Was it in order to support the people who deliberately omitted mention of the HPV vaccine from the CPR curriculum? That vaccine is 99% effective
30 seconds.
at preventing sexually transmitted cancer of the cervix. Well, I'm not going to get through all this. You were not elected to listen to who yells the loudest, but rather to make careful decisions based on the best evidence available in order to serve the children of this community. You were elected to sometimes make hard decisions. As a school board, it's your job to listen, but it's also your job to lead. Integrity involves behaving in accordance with your values. And according to the school board statement, those include asking yourselves what is in the best interest of each student and showing your commitment to practices of inclusive excellence that values differences. But integrity also requires courage. And when it doesn't, then compromise isn't a virtue, it's just cowardice.
Members of the board, I'm quickly losing the battery for the stream for about 50 people at home. I'm going to make a quick change of
Okay,
phone.
yeah, we'll give you that time.